before we get started, I'd like to ask you guys just a couple of personal questions. How many of you have loaded music onto a PC in your house? And how many of you, keeping that in mind, currently listen to that music on an iPod or your PC? Okay, or something like that, Tom, fair enough. And then beyond that, how many of you currently have living room devices, consumer electronics devices that connect up to that music? It's pretty good for this group, and there were about 5 of us that raised our hands. And then how many of you would like to? Okay, and I think, and that's really the rest of us. And we definitely, there's a trend emerging here where there's not a question in our minds that the line between PCs and consumer electronics devices is blurring. And what we've done today is assembled a panel of experts from across various industries and technology building blocks to talk about what's involved in not only creating the devices, but building the market such that everyday consumers will buy these connected devices as a matter of course, not solely the early adopters and the people in experimental phases. So what I'd like to do to get started, the format of today is going to be very simple. We have just under an hour and 15 minutes. We're going to start with a quick 30-second introduction. I'll let each of our panelists make a quick introduction of themselves. And then we have a series of questions that we're going to run through. Time permitting at the end, we'll turn it over to you guys and let you ask some follow-on questions to the group that we have here today. So starting on your far right, we have Ken Morse from Scientific Atlanta. And Ken, if you want to just do a quick introduction of yourself, that'd be great.
Sure. Hi. Ken Morse, Scientific Atlanta. As of March, now a Cisco company. Basically, SA provides end-to-end digital video systems, predominantly for cable and emerging IPTV solutions. And my role there is to kind of try and drive the ship in the right direction from a technical perspective and keep the marketing types under control.
Thanks, Ken. And Ken actually reminded me again today that he is not, in fact, in marketing. He just enjoys speaking on panels.
Play one on TV.
Exactly. Next, Ishida Shiro-san, who is the CTO at Buffalo, and he actually flew in for us from Japan yesterday. So if you'd like to say a couple of words.
My name is Takashi Shidoshiro from Buffalo in Japan. And actually, myself is belongs to father company, the Medical Holdings area, and taking care of several of the technical matters happening in our company's groups. And our company is, of course, probably everybody knows NAS devices, especially on concentrating on wireless networking and also working with media people and several other people on digital media adapters.
Thank you. Let's see, next we have, let me get the order right here. We have, we've switched a little bit. Simon.
I've switched, have I?
What's that? Well, either you've switched or I've switched, one of the two.
Okay, my name is Simon Milner. I'm from Marvell Semiconductor. Had a few roles within Marvell, helped drive embedded Wi-Fi modules into the cell phone space, and headed up CPU, new CPU technology, and then in the current position in a lead role in our enterprise business unit.
Great, thanks very much, Simon. And we have Ron Cates from Metalink. Ron?
Ron Cates, I'm with Metalink. Metalink is a semiconductor company, publicly traded on NASDAQ, and among other things, we are an early mover in the 802.11 and Wi-Fi chipset implementation business, which we feel is a pivotal technology for home networks, as we will be shortly discussing.
Great, thanks, Ron. And we have Chris Day from Philips Semiconductor.
Yeah, hi everyone, my name is Chris Day. I'm General Manager of the Media Processor Group at Philips Semiconductor. At least we're Philips Semiconductors for about another 2 weeks, and then we'll change name to something else. The Nexperia Media Processors, think of it as a video DSP, so we're mainly doing work on video compression and decompression, and we have a strong focus on the connected home and digital media adapters and products of that kind.
Great, thanks, Chris. And then last but certainly not least, Jim Hillman from Plantronics.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for choosing our session, and it's nice to be here. After a prior life at a company called LabTech, a colleague and I were recruited to start what has become the audio entertainment group at Plantronics, which is a complement to their audio communications group.
Great, thank you. So to get started, let's start off just generally speaking, and there's a number of us here are approaching connected consumer devices from a number of different angles. So generally speaking, what are consumers really looking for when it comes to connecting up entertainment devices? And let's just get things going with this general question, anyone who wants to take it. What do consumers want?
They want something that works out of the box, something that delivers a compelling experience, and is something that they can find what they want when they want.
Oh, it's a very difficult question. It's of course depends on the definition of the consumer and the definition of the, for example, digital home. But one thing clear is that what people want to do is the environment and system, which people doesn't need to understand what is a digital home and what is a digital means. It means that kind of the consistent system which will be able to deliver consistent usability and ease of use, I believe.
Great. Anyone else?
If we're going left or right, go ahead.
Let's go straight down the line of this one, then we'll mix it up a little bit.
But ease of connectivity is certainly bringing value just to the consumer, independent of the underlying architecture, underlying technology. Yeah.
Good.
Well, from my perspective, there's no doubt that the advent of the PVR and the ability to store video in other formats has really radically changed the face of consumer electronics, because it's unrealistic to expect the consumer to have to remember which of my many shows I recorded on one of my many PVRs around the house. There really needs to be a network and a centrally based storage location that can be accessed from any display throughout the house. And up to now, consumer electronics really have not been networked. They're all little islands. And I think the next really big revolution in consumer electronics will be to have all these things talk to each other. And there's no doubt that storage, centralized storage, is going to be the key driver to make networking a need.
How many of you believe that all these devices are actually going to talk to each other in the next 5 years? Okay, I guess everyone's on your side today, Chris.
I think people are looking for good quality video solutions, moving from SD to HD, and they're looking for video solutions where they don't have to worry about various different video formats, and they want access to their content without having to worry about digital rights management. So the ability to handle multiple formats, digital rights, make it transparent to the user, I think is very important to the ease of use for the customers.
Great.
I'm in a tough spot, Dan. I believe the compelling mass market consumer price point is extremely important, in addition to acceptable reproduction quality, whether that's audio or video. And then I also think that ease, to echo what my colleagues have said, is an extremely important concept. And that extends to from ease of purchase, ease of understanding, to ease of setup and ease of use. So ease across the board.
Okay, well, it sounds like there's a common theme developing here. We're going to dig in a little bit more. Out of curiosity, for those of you in the audience, how many of you are involved in the industry of building products related to consumer technologies? That's a good sign. So, is this stuff easy to build? Okay. Well, let's see if we can dive into that for a second. I mean, if we want to get into core ingredient technologies, Chris, why don't you lead us off? What are some of the key ingredients that are going to make this all work? Because apparently it's not easy to build.
No, I think there's quite a few challenges, and I think what are the key ingredients? If we look at it from a customer perspective, the first important thing is even before we talk about ease of use, is that they even understand what these products are so that they purchase them. So I think we need to do a better job as an industry to educate people as to the capabilities of these products. When it comes to ease of use, that revolves mainly around the adoption of standards so these products play together nicely such as Universal Plug and Play, DLNA, Intel Vive, etc. And then below that, if they're going to have access to the content in a transparent manner, then we need to solve issues such as digital rights management, both externally from video coming from an IP source or the internet, as well as moving the data around the home and protecting it. And then a level below that, we need to do a good job of handling all of these video formats in a manner where people don't have to worry about it, and presenting that video or still pictures in a very high quality manner for the customer. So I think there's multiple levels that have got to come together here. A lot of them around understanding, ease of use, and adoption of standards, so these things work in a nice, simple manner.
Ken, are you seeing similar challenges in getting this adopted from your side of the space?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think when you come at it from a premium content provider perspective in delivery over cable or telco systems, what they care about is obviously user experience and security and quality of service. And when we're talking video, just the pure data rates of premium video and moving that around the home. When we're talking, high def content with current codecs, we're looking at 20 megabits a stream. So trying to push to 4 rooms is 80 megabits. And that starts to push some of the existing technology. Now, the wonderful thing about technology is there's always another one over the horizon that keeps us all in job security. And so we'll hear, I'm sure, about some of those during the course of this today. But same issues exist. They want to provide a solution that just works. They don't want people picking up the phone and calling the customer service rep for why something doesn't work. And that's the challenge. No CSR calls. That's how success will be measured. Of course, it's unachievable, but get as close to zero as you can.
And is there going to be a way in the future where we get to design once and actually have some technology that we be able to live for longer than a 6-month chip cycle and move on? Or what's going to happen next?
I'll take that one again, as I'm a chip guy. Yeah, with the Nexperia media processors, apologies for the shameful plug here, but the whole idea is that it's a programmable DSP, and you can update these things with software. So as new video formats come up, you then download these, via flashcard, via IP network, and as the standards evolve, the software evolves with it, and somebody is not throwing away their product. So I think this programmability within the DSP or the microprocessor is a key thing for the silicon providers.
Okay, Ron or Simon, you want to chime in on the ingredient side?
I think I'd agree from semiconductor side. Programmability, we're rolling out. You see multiple products there, and I think the value add and the value rollout is going to be software based. So I guess to answer your question, I think you're going to see longer silicon cycles, especially as we got the process geometry and the huge investment that's required from a silicon technology perspective as well.
I think that's good news for all of us in this room. Ron, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Well, a lot of people don't realize that a semiconductor chip, which is only about the size of your thumbnail, is something that today costs about $100 million to develop. It's not like, when I graduated from college and you could put one of these things together for $1 million or $2 million. So with this kind of incredible investment, you really need to make sure that the device that you're producing has universal global appeal so that the market size justifies that humongous investment. And to that point, obviously the importance of international standards becomes very much in the forefront. Maybe that leads to the next question that you may have about that.
Well, I mean, I'm curious, who cares about standards in this room? Okay, quite a number of us. I mean, there are a lot of logos flying around these days. When it comes to ingredients, we're seeing anything from DLNA to UPnP to marketing monikers such as Vive and Plays for Sure, et cetera. First question is, who cares about standards? I mean, when I used my first Bluetooth phone and headset, nothing worked, and I thought that was a standard. So who cares about standards, and where's that going to take us? Maybe, Jim, you want to start with that one?
Sure, I think all consumers care about standards, and or maybe said differently, consumers don't necessarily care about standards, but they care a lot about interoperability. So they don't necessarily know DLNA or 802.11, but when they bring that box home, it better work, it better connect to other boxes in their home if it's a network situation, and it better work or you're looking at a return.
Anyone else?
Well, I would say that the standard, or the existence of a standard, is a necessary but not sufficient condition. A really good standard is typically augmented with an industry consortia of some sort that is responsible for interoperability and compliance testing. And I would just bring up the Wi-Fi Alliance as an example of something that really does work. That little Wi-Fi logo that you get when you buy your router, that assures you that that product has been tested and can interoperate with vendors, with other vendors' equipment. That's important for the consumer, of course.
So how many logos do we need on consumer devices?
You're going to see a lot more.
What do you guys think about that? Please.
If you're okay with it.
I'm very okay with it. Let's keep this interactive.
I guess my biggest concern, both as a consumer and as a guy that's on the vector space, is can you trust those logos? And I look at, to the point about the Wi-Fi Alliance, 802.11i, interoperable products, didn't happen for like 9 months after certification. HDMI products, you know, the first session that I sat in this morning, I see guys smiling up here. You take an HDMI box and try to plug it into an HDMI TV, and some of the time it's going to work, some of the time it may work. The moderator of the Dynamic Panel this morning talked about the fact that he kept getting HDCP errors on the screen every time that he tried to change channels. So I guess I'm a little curious about the value of all these logos that we're thinking about putting in, and we have to set more stringent standards for interoperability before you get one of those logos.
Simon, you want to field that?
I think, yeah, so clearly we talked about the consortiums and you know, the need for more rigorous interoperability testing. I think to the consumer, they're not really too concerned about what those logos are. Obviously, that's just a mechanism to make sure the different suppliers, the different platforms talk to one another from an underlying architecture perspective. So,
such as RIA in a video age, RIAA.
RIAA, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
You should show something, yes? Anyone else care to comment on this?
HDCP, absolutely. We live with that every day, and part of it is there is no reference certification process. You know, what we end up doing is going and buying as many different TVs as we can and plugging our stuff into them, and you know, you only have to take a look at Best Buy or Fry's and realize that there's a heck of a lot of different models out there. So, you know, that's not an approach that's ever going to succeed. So, as Ron was saying, the whole having an alliance there that really does deliver on certification and, you know, then putting the onus on that organization to get in front of every one of us as individuals that I will not buy a product unless it has that logo and that logo means something.
Okay. So let's complicate it a little bit more. What about open standards? I mean, a number of the standards that we've just referred to are closed body standards defined by a very limited number of people. What about open standards, the committees and implementation of them, and then taking that all the way to Plugfest? I mean, are these things ever going to work? How many of you have heard of DLNA? So what about the open standards, and what's going to take for these devices to work out of the box without generating a support call? Who'd like to take this? Chris? Ron?
Go ahead. Oh, thank you. That's good. So yeah, I mean, coming back, I think having a certification process associated with these things is very important. I mean, on the video side, you know, there is a lot of testing with each video codec. That has now become much more complicated as we've added digital rights management on top of that. And then as we add things like DTCP/IP, et cetera, it's definitely challenging. And I think, you know, if there isn't a standards committee that is really got a certification program, then it is left up to each vendor to test every single product, every single combination and permutation, and that is going to be a problem. So it may even be better that some of these open standards that are not so standard, but at least have a certification program, are in better shape than the ones that are open that do not.
Yeah, the beauty about standards is there's so many to choose from. Choose wisely, and standards within standards. Could get into a song tune all of a sudden. You know, one of the other things that I think you see a lot of companies take an approach with as well is to try to drive an ecosystem to the market, you know, leveraging interoperable standards where they can. And it's certainly something, now that I've got my Cisco input, is something where, you know, taking a system where you're driving at everything from open standards-based networks into the delivery of devices in the home, through the Linksys guys, interoperability there, you can actually flesh out in a big organization the interoperability of these standards. It's not about creating proprietary solutions, it's actually having the scale that if a standalone alliance can't do it, you can actually do it in some of these larger organizations, and then feed all of the input from that back into the whole standards process to actually take it to a bigger market and give it opportunity for so many more players.
Ishida Shiro-san,
Yep.
does it help you at Buffalo because you get to make all of the devices under your own brand name?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And how do you see that moving forward in the future in working with other brands?
Of course. For example, video format type thing, or for example, the protocol-wise, like a DNA, that kind of thing, that kind of area should be interoperable with other companies, like, for example, our company's product and CE company's product, or even, of course, our competitors' product should be interoperable in future. But today, actually, not only our company, but the other company also doing a kind of have some of the proprietary portion. So what we should be careful in making sure the interoperability. For example, DNA is to how it depends on how we will be able to keep the standard, definition of the standard.
So Philip keeps showing up at my office with this new Toshiba HD DVD player plugging into a Philips TV and it doesn't work. Who should he call?
You should have bought a Philips DVD player. In fact, I want to point out that that is actually a very interesting opportunity for consumer electronics companies. Because if the consumer perceives that there is some value of buying various boxes from the same brand, and if you buy into that concept that I introduced earlier, that in the future all consumer electronics companies or boxes are going to be networked, then there is, I think, a lot of perceived value in consumer land for brands that guarantee either interoperability between each other or interoperability between boxes that they manufacture. That could become a very, very important added value to people. And hopefully, you know, that will be a short-term phenomenon. Eventually, everybody will talk to everybody else. But in the short term, that could become a very interesting way that the market goes.
So Jim, let's add DRM into the mix now. We start off with standards, then we open them up. Now we'll just throw in some security. And I see Alvin looking questionable in the background there about just where we're going with this statement. So what's DRM doing to consumers now, and where's it going to go?
I think a lot of the consumers in this group is obviously a notable exception, just have no idea what DRM is until they try to do some clever things with the files that they've downloaded from Apple's into their iTunes. Right. And then suddenly you've got, you know, kind of the light starts to go off and you realize you haven't got maybe what you thought you had. For the time being, I think that will be okay, that some companies with some big muscle will get away with that. Just like I think there's an inverse relationship to the marketing muscle of manufacturers and the necessity of supporting standards. I mean, if you've got the marketing name, I think you can get away for a period of time at least with a proprietary or closed loop system. Before you ultimately have to move to standards and more of a commodity item that perhaps commands less of a margin premium. But ultimately, I think companies like Apple are going to come under fire, and the consumers are going to demand more open files that are more flexible. And I think my crystal ball says we'll see a move in that direction.
How many of you think Apple should open up Fairplay for multiple device consumption? How many of you think they will in the short term? Any other comments here on DRM?
I guess I'd say, DRM exists for two reasons. One, to protect content, and two, to protect the business models of the people providing that content. So in the case of Apple, keeping Fairplay closed right now is key to their business. So that's not just going to change because we say we want it to change. And that's true of many other providers out there. I think ultimately, as Jim was saying, there will ultimately be a degree of consumer revolt, and will drive a DRM interoperability, much like the Coral Consortium and other things are trying to do out there. It's just, very telling when you look at the Coral Consortium that's trying to bring all the disparate DRMs together. You look at everybody who's signed up to it, and there's two missing companies, Microsoft and Apple, which between them, I don't know, 90 how much % of the content in the world is protected with. So that kind of gives you the state of play.
It's fair enough, and I think we've seen evidence that Microsoft is at least moving in the direction of opening up. We've seen almost nothing from Apple. What's going to drive Apple to do it? Chris, any ideas?
The French government.
Competition.
Yeah, maybe competition from Microsoft as they roll out their platforms, but are they going to be any more open? We'll have to see.
So, and how do you think, well, maybe we've already talked about this, but one of my questions here is just that fine line between fair use versus locked up content. Is there an end user experience that protects content and still lets it freely move around the ecosystem? Can you see it happening? What do you think, Simon?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Sure. I mean, my question is basically there's no question that we're going to have protected content. There's no question that we want to move it around the network. We've seen the early days of what Sony has done with protected content, and it's been rather disastrous. And so is there some sort of middle ground that keeps content protected and still at the same time lets a really positive user experience occur?
I think that's a tough question. I think it'll be interesting to see how things roll out there from an end-to-end perspective. I guess it's not clear to me that there is any middle ground there.
Are there any good examples of open DRM solutions today? Anyone?
Maybe not, but I will point out that despite the closed DRM that Apple has, still hasn't prevented my son from spending half of his allowance on downloading music from them. So the point is that what you may perceive as a bad consumer experience isn't necessarily shared by everybody. As long as he gets what he wants into his iPod, that's what's important to him.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, probably the important thing is not open or closed or whatever. The important thing is to people, consumer or user, doesn't showing up the existence of the DRM to consumer or users. That is probably the most important thing. Whatever the number of the copies or moving number of the moves, arrows, whatever, that is a key, I believe.
So you think the key point is as long as we can't see it, it's okay?
Yes, right.
How many of you agree with that? Some of us here, okay. So let's move on a little bit. you know, DRM, I think if we just generalize DRM, it's a disaster right now. It's a series of disparate technologies depending on what kind of device we're on, whether it's OMA on mobile, whether it's, you know, Microsoft on a PC, or whether we get into CA on a set-top world. And maybe, Ken, you could lead us off. How is this all going to come together, presuming all these devices are going to work together in the future?
I guess there's kind of two stages to it. There's the in the first phase, there's the opportunity of transcripting, so actually going from one DRM to another. The challenge there is not technology at all. Technology exists. It's about who's going to step up as a vendor, license the relevant DRMs, and actually have the agreements in place with those DRM suppliers to actually be able to carry out that task, which is actually more the biggest challenge, because a lot of the content agreements that, say, a music studio would have with Apple includes guarantees about how that content is protected all the way through the system. And so the moment that that gets transcripted into another DRM, Apple are kind of exposed, and as would any other supplier in that situation. So there's some opportunities, and I think you will see some transcripting solutions come out, and we'll see how they kind of stand up from a business perspective going forward. And then beyond that, you know, I guess there's the right now implementation. Support every DRM in your product, and you're done for the ones that will open up.
Is that what you're doing?
We're trying to support what makes sense to give the best coverage, because with every DRM comes a cost, and that cost gets passed on. So you have to balance that. And then the longer term one is consumer revolt, as Jim pointed out. And we're still quite a few years from that. We have little pockets of it, countries, France, you know, things like that, but we're still a ways from consumer revolt.
Okay, thanks. So before we move on to our next topic, does anyone from our audience want to ask any questions of the panelists regarding DRM, standards, open standards, et cetera? Anyone at all? Okay, let's move on if there aren't any questions. So, Jim, is there going to be one source of content in the digital home? Is it going to be lots of hubs? Is it going to be a PC? Is it going to be a set-top box? How's this going to work? Where's content going to come from?
Well, notwithstanding Microsoft's dream of having that server in the living room with everything on it, I just don't see that happening. I see silos of multimedia content throughout the house, and I mean, if we think of our own situations, most of us have that today. We've got digital files on the PC. Certainly, we've got content on the iPod, maybe a thumb drive that someone's given us with some of their favorite tunes on it. I just don't see the consumer bending to the whims of the large companies that would like to see all that content on one central server. And I think what's the manufacturers are going to have to do is be cognizant of the consumer use situations, realize that no one's going to be excited about moving content to one central server, and there are going to have to be solutions out there akin to a peer-to-peer network in the home where wherever you've got content, you're going to be able to listen to it. We call it from anywhere to anywhere within the home.
Anyone else want to comment on that?
Yeah, I think I agree. There's not just going to be one source. There's going to be multiple ones already today. I think, like most people, have a set-top box with a hard drive in it, and a PC and an iPod. And the issue is trying to make all of these things play together when I want them to, and be able to watch content that's in my PC in the office, appear on my TV in the living room. Those are the issues that have got to be solved. But I don't see one thing acting as a server for all materials and content. Okay,
so if that's the case, what are the other devices that are going to be networked? I mean, I think it's popularly agreed upon that televisions are going to be networked, for example. What about mobile phones, printers? What are the other devices that go into this ecosystem?
I think there's a few new ones. I mean, there's portable devices. We've got some new categories coming up, things like digital picture frames. Various display devices. The digital media adapter, which is the box that we're all working on to connect these things together, I think is growing momentum, and that functionality, it's moving from being just a standalone product to becoming a function in a variety of different devices, whether it be display devices or DVD recorders, portables, digital picture frames, and then integration of storage into those devices. So it might be a box which contains all your digital photographs, for example. And I think some of those categories of products are perhaps easier for people to understand than a device which is just labelled a DMA and is a network thing that people do not understand it. They understand a digital picture frame or a box that stores their photos or something like that. They may not understand a DMA. So I think there's quite a range of new products that combine this DMA functionality and connectivity into new devices.
I know Tom was just talking about a terabyte in your pocket. Is that going to happen?
Yeah, why not? I mean, it's not just hard drive. I mean, terabyte, yeah, we're probably talking hard disk technology, but one of the other interesting trends is flash memory pricing. I mean, it's amazing. And if you look at what that can do, combined with some of the new video compression standards like H.264, Windows Media, etc., you can get an awful lot of video storage on a small handheld device with no hard disk drive. And I think that's going to open up all sorts of possibilities.
And then, Dan, you mentioned devices. Let's not forget about the mobile phone either. In Japan, if you use that as a model, some 90% of audio content that's downloaded in Japan goes right on the phone. So we're going to have to figure out a way to get that content onto the home network or be able to use it some way, shape, or form within the home.
So is the phone a digital media adapter or a digital media server?
Yes.
Would anyone else like to add to that?
Can be both.
Can be both. Okay, very good. I'd like to hear about, can the digital media adapter become a real category, or is it just a bridging device and then it moves as an integrated piece of technology into CE devices in general?
I think there's a near-term standalone device opportunity, and a lot of that is its use is actually consumer education in terms of what kind of devices are possible. I think to get to ultimate scale and ubiquity, it's a functionality set that gets literally consumed into other devices. We're going to see, as other panelists were saying, a whole bunch of new types of devices come to the market that we just can't even imagine today, as the trends of storage and processing and video codecs and the like move on. So, interim, there's a great standalone device there, but longer term, people want ubiquity of content access, both within the home and when they're on the move. And the only way for that to happen is for it to just seamlessly disappear into every device you carry around.
So, I mean, Ken's just opened himself up for this. He's VP of Client Architecture at SA. So let's just ask the question. So when's the stuff finally going to show up in a set-top box so I get it for free?
Well, that's an interesting question. Set-top boxes are a service provider-provided device. And as soon as you get into that interesting area, what you and I would make our individual purchase decisions on what we saw on the shelf in Fry's or Best Buy, is very different from what a service provider would do. And so for them, again, we all sit here and say there's technologies, all this stuff's doable today to different degrees. We could put that into set-tops tomorrow. The reality is, if it isn't robust, reliable, easy to use, works out the box, the service provider is going to get phone calls. And every phone call is at least $5. And we're not going to pay for access to our content. So where's the business model? And that's the challenge in a service provider environment. And the only way it'll come is through competition, ultimately, is where they won't have any choice but to offer it. But in the near term, they're doing rather well with their video offerings. And whilst we can demonstrate all that capability on set-tops, taking it to market is something that still, from a business model perspective, is a little ways away.
Ron?
Well, the point I wanted to make was that that point of view, which I completely agree with, is a very U.S.-centric point of view, because here in the U.S. we get our set-top boxes from cable operators or from satellite operators. But that's not the case in many other parts of the world where people buy their set-top box at retail. And anytime you have a retail model there, the ferment of competition requires them to be a little bit more innovative. And I think that at some upcoming trade shows, particularly in Europe, we're going to start seeing a lot of set-top boxes that have PVRs in them and various network connectivity that are going to be offered at retail, and we'll be able to interoperate with television sets that have network connections to talk to those set-top boxes directly built in. So that wave is coming, and I'm sure that they're going to point some of that at the US if there's a retail channel for it.
Chris, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I was just thinking, I mean, obviously we've been working closely with you and Mediabolic for over about 18 months now on the DMA, and we're seeing a lot of interest and a lot of design wins. But as I look at most of the new products that are coming out, they are the DMA capability being integrated with another function. That seems to be the model, and whether that be cell phones, DVD recorders, digital signage, digital picture frames, etc. And so I think this people need to understand exactly what they're buying. I'm not sure that the DMA is a standalone device. They fully understand it yet.
How many of you have heard of a digital media adapter? How many of you think that's an actual market category moving forward? Okay, about half of us. How many of you think it's going to be folded into another device in the future? Most of us here. Mm-hmm. Okay. So all these devices are going to be networked. Simon, what topology is it going to be? I mean, is it coax, power line? Just pick one.
Just pick one.
Can I get
Thanks for that one. Thank you very much. So from our perspective, of course, from a Marvell perspective, of course, we're looking at ubiquity, we're looking at IP connectivity. We've got a lot of devices out there today that are connected either in some simplistic peer-to-peer type models or fully networked using embedded Wi-Fi. So we're seeing really a vast array of peripherals coming out with embedded Wi-Fi 11G, I guess today, of course, going to 11N. Some complexities around how that's going to roll out, but so today I think we've already got a whole bunch of devices there that are network enabled. I agree in terms of the complexities, in terms of the sort of complex map of all these devices, multiple content sources, once again, how you abstract that, present a single user interface to the user, how you present equal experience independent of the content source or the content terminal. So from a low-level infrastructure perspective, I think there's already a lot of networked devices out there from a whole bunch of cell phones coming out now with embedded Wi-Fi cameras. On top of that, there's a new family of devices coming out that are more than just Wi-Fi, but UPnP DLNA certified. So I guess from the ecosystem, or from the infrastructure, we're building up that basic connectivity. I think the complexities are very much around more the service provider, roll out business models and DRM management.
Fair enough. And so, Jim, from your perspective, is Bluetooth is now an accepted DLNA network protocol. Is Bluetooth important in the connected home for entertainment?
I think you never want to count something like Bluetooth out with the power of that SIG, and Bluetooth is going to be around and is going to continue to evolve for some time. I think what you're going to have to do is figure out a way to get the Bluetooth and whatever your home network is, presumably some flavor of 802, working together, and that's what I was alluding to earlier when I talked about being able to walk into your house and have the content on your cell phone automatically downloaded to some NAS on your home network.
Did you want to add to that, Chris?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's we have a digital media adapter reference design that we work very closely with Mediabolic on. And indeed, we are seeing the customers asking for Bluetooth support, and that is specifically for connecting cell phones to that platform. So that is already happening.
You know, sorry, please go ahead.
I was just going to add, you know, from a video distribution point of view, and when I say that, it's premium video. So what HBO cares about if they're going to distribute within the home, the message has to be no new wires. So that either drives you towards wireless as it becomes appropriate, robust, reliable, everything that was required there to push the kind of bandwidths around that we're talking about, which it's certainly making inroads in that area, or over the existing coax wire that's in the home, because the TVs tend to sit next to where the coax outputs are. And that's equally true in the US and worldwide as well. Finding a Cat5 outlet is something that you don't find too often in many homes.
And you chip guys certainly know more about this than I do, but aren't we having some demand at least, or some talk about multimodal chips with both Bluetooth and 802 functionality incorporated? What's happening there?
Oh, it's interesting because I'm the video guy rather than the wireless guy at Philips, but that is indeed what is required, and I am aware of semiconductors working on exactly that solution, and it makes a lot of sense to combine both in a single IC.
I've heard in the future we're going to have cell phones with over a dozen radios in them. What do you think, Simon?
I think we're pretty close to, I don't know how many radios are in now, but I could maybe count 4 or 5 already, yeah.
So, you know, at our company, we make a software that powers various connected devices, and one of the devices we make is a digital media adapter, and one of its core functions is to play video. And every time I give the demo, people say, well, you can't do video over wireless, so can you do it or not? And if you can, how? How many of you think that wireless is a good solution for transmitting video over the home?
More quality.
Outcome qualifiers.
I mean, let's just say VC1. Is that okay? Let's go ahead and maybe Ron, you want to kick that off?
Okay, obviously I'm going to have a very biased opinion here, but I tell you, I think we're at Metalink. We're actually one of the few companies that may be uniquely qualified to comment about that, because prior to choosing wireless, we spent a tremendous amount of R&D looking at alternative technologies. Our heritage is with VDSL technology, which is used by phone companies primarily in Asia for very high-speed digital services into the home. And about 3 years ago, they came to us and said, hey, you know, we've noticed that people just don't have their TVs closely located to the RJ11 jack where the phone line terminates. So can't you come up with some sort of a technology that allows us to move digital video content over to the TV location? Now, being that we're a wireline company, inherently, our inclination was to pursue wireline solutions. Obviously, phone lines weren't one of them. That was the whole problem. But we certainly looked at coaxial and power line. And you know, each one of those categories had either a standards problem or a ubiquity problem or a technical problem that really prevented it from being a good solution for video delivery. And only wireless happened to be a technology which is easy for the consumer to self-install. Every home is wireless ready. You don't have to put new wires in. In addition to that, we've observed empirically that some of the newer 802.11 technology is not only capable of delivering broadcast quality video with whole home coverage, but it can do multiple and simultaneous channels of HDTV quality video utilizing this technology. So we're very, very optimistic about people being able to use wireless for video in particular.
Yes, please.
I may disagree with the fact that every home is wireless ready. Right? I mean, I know lots of people have at least one wireless access point in their house, and they just, no matter where they go, they can't reach it everywhere.
So in fact, that is the myth that I think people like myself and my colleague from Marvell are going to have to utilize the next few years to dispel. Because the prior generations of Wi-Fi technology, A, B, and G, First of all, were not intended or designed for video delivery. And even with data delivery, they're very weak by comparison. And they've really given wireless a very bad name, especially with video. And you know, it's obviously there's only one way to change your mind, and that's to prove it with real hardware. But I want to assure you that the good people of the IEEE have put in a lot of new technology in the standard that mitigates many of the shortcomings that ABNG had, particularly for video delivery, and I think you're going to be very, very pleasantly surprised.
Okay. Shiro-san, how important is 802.11n in this new equation?
The importance of the 11n is there are several points. Of course, probably some other people will point out, but the point is the 11n is covering 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz, and many of actually many of the CE people are thinking to, I believe they're thinking to use it to 5 gigahertz for video transmission. The one reason that wireless networking, especially Wi-Fi or .11 network, is not suitable, they're not suitable for video transmission is coming from the interference of the 2.4 gigahertz channels. So that assuming 11n became a dual band with 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz, and the 5 gigahertz mostly used for video transmission or any of the premium or whatever the content distribution. From this point of view, 11n is very important. Of course, the characteristics of the higher bandwidth is, of course, it's important thing in an urban area type, that kind of high density area. Right.
Thank you.
Well, I would tend to agree. I think that the fact that N permits the utility of the 5 gigahertz band, and the fact that the FCC just has allocated so much more bandwidth up there than the 2.4 is a big step in the right direction. It's just, you know, one of the many key technologies that make 802.11n different from what you can buy at Fry's today. Anybody that has utilized a G radio and then turned on their microwave oven, which utilizes exactly the same band, knows what severe interference can happen. You know, utilizing the different and 5 gigahertz band, I think, is a tremendous step in the right direction.
Well, okay, so just to stand off on this topic, so why did Dell and Microsoft and all these guys keep talking about A as the standard for moving video around?
What do you mean by A? You mean the A band. Not A. Nobody's talking about utilizing A. They're talking about the A band, which happens to be the 5 gigahertz band. So it's basically we're talking about the same thing.
Chris, did you want to add to that at all?
Yeah, I think you know, we've talked to a number of the major PC vendors, and they're also talking about 5 gigahertz 802.11n as the realistic solution, certainly for high definition video. You know, on the existing products, we've tackled, or maybe Intel's tackled it in a slightly different manner, in as much as the Vive PC is doing the transcoding from HD to SD and then transmitting wirelessly, and then in the Philips chips we do SD to HD up conversion, which is a good solution given the wireless products that are out there today. But again, we would see the 5 gigahertz 802.11n as the final solution. In fact, we partnered with Metalink here to do demonstrations of that at Computex in Taiwan a little earlier this year.
Thanks. So we're going to slightly switch topics. Does anyone want to ask any of the panelists any specific questions back on the video wireless side? Yes, Russ.
I have a video source question talking about moving high definition video around the house. It seems that someone mentioned DVRs before, and that has a good chance to be video repository, video storage from which you would move the stuff around the home. But with 3
So let me let you in on a dirty little secret. So for the last 2 years, we've been shipping versions of our DVRs that have built-in home networking over coax, so that you can view your standard definition, high definition content on any existing set-top that you would have purchased from us, or the operator would have purchased in the past. So there's already 25 million operational clients that can work against those DVRs that are out there today. Why don't you hear much more about it? Is because it probably adds, $2 to $5 of cost to the set-top, and a service provider doesn't know how to charge you and I for that service of being able to access all your DVR anywhere you want in the house, high definition included. And so, the penetration, it's out there in the tens and tens of thousands, but it's not out there in the millions. So it exists, and we're actually doing that today because it really does start with moving premium content around. That's the first barrier you have to push down, and then it's interoperability to get to that other content in the other domain and bring that into the same place.
Huh?
Well, actually, that kind of feeds into the question I was, sort of extension on that, and that is how we want, the coax that's close to TVs, since a lot of content is related there, especially on the entertainment side, is that how can one start to drive the use of features that can be built in? In fact, there's things right now that are on set-top boxes that a lot of the providers don't turn on. They're there, they're already in the box.
Mm-hmm.
So what is it that can actually start enabling some of the technologies that are out there, that could be out there? It's a generic question, because that could be a real source for that networking.
Yeah.
Do you want to just repeat the question so everyone can hear?
Sorry.
Yeah. What Tom was asking was basically that there's on a lot of devices that are out there, there's a lot of latent capability sitting in them that really hasn't been turned on by the service providers or the vendors, and kind of what would actually drive that to happen. Prime example I love to give is on all 25 million boxes we've got out there for the last 10 years, there's a USB port sitting there. Fabulous. Can do so much with USB. And I hate to be a broken record, but I shall be. And it comes down to business model every time. Enabling a service that's free will always cause service calls to happen, and therefore it's a money-losing proposition. Unless you're losing your core customers through competitive pressures, in which case you may do the waiting and say, no, I'm going to do that. Starting to charge you and I for access to our own content is a real challenge. It's different when you say, it's $10 to get HBO every month kind of thing. There's a value proposition that's really clear, it's content you didn't otherwise have. When it's more things, it gets very murky, and I think those are some of the things that people have to get comfortable with, because they believe it is almost a given right to just be able to access anything, anywhere, at no cost.
So maybe a question to Ken then. So you're charging for DVRs today.
Yeah.
And I guess most people, a large proportion of people have DVRs in their home. So can you start charging for home-wide DVR? So you've got a DVR, maybe just one DVR box, and then sharing that content across multiple terminals.
And that's what our current customers have started doing. Where they'll charge you anything from $5.95 to $10 a month for DVR. For another $2, you can watch what you want, where you want.
Well, let me point something out. The reason why the service provider can charge for DVR is because a little company called TiVo went out there and educated the consumer about what DVRs are and why they are important. And in fact, the service providers are structurally disincentivized, or let's say structurally handicapped, from being a radical mover or a new adopter of technology, because they are so justifiably paranoid about the service calls that would happen in the event that equipment broke. Unfortunately for them, that opens the door to retail-oriented consumer electronics companies, TiVo as an example, to go out there and educate the public and grab early market share. And only after that market is developed and educated does then the service provider go in there and sort of offer a Me Too product on a lease basis rather than a retail basis. We saw that with DVRs. In fact, we saw the same phenomenon with 802.11 networking. You know, it was Netgear and D-Link that educated the public about the benefits of a wireless router. It wasn't you know, somebody from set-top box or a residential gateway world. However, today, you know, all two-wire residential gateways have built-in Wi-Fi in them. So I think that that same phenomenon is going to occur with video home networks. Consumer electronics companies, and maybe some of them with names that you know, and some of them with names that you've never heard of, like TiVo was, let's say, 5 or 6 years ago, are going to come in there. They're going to tout the advantages of home networks. They're going to introduce new products that have storage in them. People are going to love them. They're going to start deploying them. It's going to become a ubiquitous technology. And then the service provider is going to wake up, and all of a sudden, Scientific Atlanta is going to be able to make a lot of money by putting that functionality on board. The same way they are today with DVRs.
Well
Thank
put.
you, Ron.
Yes, please.
Ken, I'm curious about your comments on latency. Your CEO, John Chambers, gave a recent interview talking about they bought Scientific Atlanta for a reason, right? And making it work with Linksys and making it both business units talk together. There's ambitions and visions for digital connected home, other than just pushing the boxes out, obviously. So you've had latency issues in the business model in the past, but are you able to comment on how Scientific Atlanta will start working with home networking and some of the other assets in the empire?
Yeah, what I can certainly say is obviously, you know, based on what I said we've been doing with multi-room DVR already, kind of thing, that was a path we were going down. And you know, and we do find ourselves a lot of times being the ones who, to the service providers, and I totally agree with everything Ron said, being the ones who are actually pushing the service provider to go down a path and say, DVR, it is important, you really want to do it. Multi-room is important, you really want to do it. So we have customer requirements right now to, you know, start putting in connected home type capabilities. You know, we've already got announced IPTV products with HPNA in them for connecting within the home. There's going to be MoCA products, as you can imagine, given the relationship as well with Cisco. And one thing that, you know, certainly I'm very involved in right now is looking at the wider array of capabilities inside the bigger company and organizations to actually make some of this interoperability happen at a level and a scale where you've got the consumer reach of a Linksys, you know, the existing video deployments of a Scientific Atlanta, and then the backbone of a Cisco to actually deliver a quality of experience. Because service providers have to, you know, one of the favorite phrases we have internally right now, have to evolve into experience providers. And once you're an experience provider, your mindset changes, okay? And it changes away from the historical mindset that Ron pointed out so well. So.
Any other questions? Yes, in the back.
The panel has been very bullish on wireless, specifically about and my question would be around timing. I guess you have your work kind of piece apart. I guess you have working assumptions as to when these technologies will be mass market technologies, and so when, how many, and whether that would actually mean that the wire solutions such as MoCA and HPNA will be gone, or that they would coexist.
Who wants to tackle that?
Me?
Please.
Yeah. Sorry. For the actual market scene, it's very difficult to predict when the new technology became a kind of mature, reaching to a mature level. But the 11L itself is ratification, standardization will be happening in year 2000, probably next year or next year, some 1 to 2 years range. So that, but on the other hand, our company and also our competitors and the other industry people are strongly pushing 11N technology, assuming that the basic baseline of the technology will not be changed so dramatically, so that there is of course possibility that the 11 draft 11N level technology became a major wireless technology within probably 1 year. What do you think?
Well, I mean, to address your question specifically, I think that there's going to be a period of time where all of these technologies are going to coexist. In fact, all of the technologies on coax are going to coexist. You're going to have MoCA, you're going to have HPNA3, you're going to have coaxis, you're going to have TNT, and they're all going to take a sliver of market for themselves, and they're going to coexist with 802.11n. 802.11n is a little bit farther back in terms of development. As was mentioned, the standard is not going to be ratified until the early part of 2008, although I'll have to say that compliant product to a draft standard is probably going to be out and certified ahead of that. So the coexistence will continue for quite a while, I think, and it depends on what you have at home. If you happen to have coax in every room and a coaxial outlet everywhere you want to hang your TV, great, you use coax. If you happen to live in a house that doesn't have coax in every room you want to have a TV, then you're going to have some sort of an overlay technology at a minimum. Or maybe you'll scrap coax and go with something else.
Okay, so in the spirit of keeping on schedule here, what I'd like to do is just ask everyone here on the panel to put on their vision hats, look ahead 3 years. And Jim, let's start with you. What does the connected home look like from your perspective 3 years from now?
It's a tough question to answer. I think we've got, with the proliferation of multimedia content and with the homes that are connected to broadband and the set-top boxes, we've got a way to get that multimedia digital content to the home. I think right now we're looking at an exciting opportunity. It's a green field for those of you in the CE manufacturing business to look at interesting ways, once that content hits the home, to do aggregation, distribution, and show the consumer a way to navigate that content. And for the consumer, I think there are many exciting products that we're going to see. If you think of the way, for example, primary devices have been put on the market in the past, you've got sort of a closed system to do video, and you've got a closed system to view your DVDs. Now we're going to see a disaggregation of the player, the network, and the storage functions, and all of these things are going to be put together in different ways. And so I think we're going to see an interesting panoply of different devices that we've not seen before out on the market.
Great. We have just under a minute left for each person, so I'll just ask you, Chris, to summarize your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I think I'll simply add, we've been working on this digital media adapter now for 18 months, and I see that functionality, this connectivity, moving into a range of devices in the home: cell phones, portable media players, digital picture frames, connected DVD recorders, and I think the vision is for people to have access to their personal content anytime, anywhere, and to break down the barriers between these devices. And I think we've made a lot of headway in the last 18 months, and I'm really excited about where we're going to be in 3 years' time, because I think a lot of the problems that we've had are going to be solved.
Thank you.
Well, every time that I want to sort of put on my vision hat on and see what the future is going to be like, I need do nothing more than turn to the teenage kids that I have at home. Their ability to just absorb and utilize new technology is just astonishing as far as I'm concerned. The fact that my son, when he downloads a clip from YouTube, he can only view it on the little screen on the computer, that he can't ship it to the TV in the living room, just frustrates the hell out of him. Why can't I do that? And why can't I take the show that I recorded on the DVR and display it on the TV upstairs? Because I want to watch it there. And just talking to them and seeing what they would want in the future, I think is, it's a window to me to what the future is going to look like. Because those guys are going to be the consumers of 3 to 5 to 10 years. They're going to be there with the dollars at Fry's and at Best Buy buying those things. And they're going to demand those kinds of products.
Thanks, Ron. Simon, any quick comments?
Yeah, I think pretty much all the answers today have been complex. I don't think there's been any simple answers. I think the digital home will become a complex system, and there's a huge investment taking place today from a low-level infrastructure perspective. So there's also clearly drivers. I think there's a big disconnect in terms of what's out there today and what people really need. So the next phase, we need to build more intelligence into the infrastructure. We need some pioneers in the service provider space or retailers that really bring the use cases and the services that people want today. But so I see a disconnect today, but pretty hopeful that we can make that connection certainly over the next 3 years.
That's good news then. Shiro-san?
Yeah. It's just only me coming from Japan, and some of the network environment is different between each countries. But I believe within a short time, like 2 or 3 years, one possibility is that we should be aware on possibility that the video service, so-called video on demand, became a realistically usable service.
Great.
Yeah. In Japan, we are already reaching that level. Yeah.
Ken, any quick closing thoughts?
Yeah, everything they said. Plus, in 3 years' time, these are fresh, I wrote them down just now. Premium content from your experience provider, high definition, standard definition, throughout the home, over the most applicable technology, to keep Ron and me on the same page. To your TV, pulling in clear content and a select subset of DRM, protected content to the TV. My expectation, Microsoft DRM. At that point in time, being able to view your premium content on your cell phone. I mean, everyone demos it today, but it'll be a lot more ubiquitous in 3 years. What can you thank for those 3 things to happen? The telcos, and the fact that they're coming to market and going to shake things up in the video space and make cable and satellite step up and watch the war keep going. What we still won't have is the compelling user interface so that my mother can use this stuff.
Fair enough. Well, I want to take just a second to thank all of you for attending this panel, and then most importantly, join me in a round of applause for our panelists and their comments. Thank you.